The updates coming out of the massacre last week, well, they're only getting worse. And many are arguing that these newly released details, that they're only providing further confirmation that police cannot be trusted, and they failed here. So foremost, we've recently learned that the Uvalde Police Department and the school district's police force are no longer cooperating with the Texas Department of Public Safety. That's that entity that is investigating the mass shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers on Tuesday of last week. So ABC News reports on this issue that according to sources, the decision to stop cooperating occurred soon after the director of DPS, Stephen McGraw, held a news conference Friday during which he said the delayed police entry into the classroom was the wrong decision and contrary to protocol. And speaking of that news conference last Friday, what we also know is that at least one crucial detail that was proffered by DPS Director McGraw during that conference was completely and totally inaccurate. Remember this here.
We know from video evidence, 1127, the exterior door suspected of where we knew the shooter entered, Ramos, was propped open by a teacher. 1128, the suspect vehicle crashes into the ditch, as previously described. The teacher runs to the room 132 to retrieve a phone, and that same teacher walks back to the exit door, and door remains propped open.
Now we know that the door wasn't propped open, and this whole effort to blame the teacher for leaving the door open, what that did was allow GOP. It essentially opened the door for GOP to make all sorts of excuses to blame everyone for this massacre except for gun and lawmakers who are not providing reasonable, sensible gun control. Again, that door was not propped open at all by that teacher. Rather, that teacher closed the door. So that police narrative is completely false. And we know this per the AP. They have now determined that the teacher, who has not been identified, propped the door open with a rock, but then removed the rock and closed the door when she realized there was a shooter on campus, said Travis Considine. He's the chief communications officer for the Texas Department of Public Safety. And we know this because, well, video evidence confirmed that the teacher was telling the truth, that he or she did not prop open the door. And this individual, as we know, came forward through their lawyer to provide confirmation of this, as well as there was footage from the school. So how the police came to the conclusion that the teacher left the door open and thus Ramos came right in seems to be quite, I don't know, fitting for the police if they want to avoid any kind of accountability for their failure to take action. We also know that there's newly released audio that also confirms that contrary to what law enforcement originally claimed, they actually did know that there were children still alive in those classrooms some 40 minutes after the gunman entered Robb Elementary School and 30 minutes before police actually decided to do anything about the shooter. So some advance warning here as this footage may be upsetting.
Dispatch audio telling officers a student is calling from the classroom that the gunman had entered.
You have a child on row 12. Are we able to? Is there anybody inside of the building? Child is advising he is in the room full of victims at this moment.
An ABC News analysis of the video shows that was at approximately 12:13.
8 to 9 children.
I remember I talked last week about how the New York Times had put out this article largely recounting what police said, which was that when they arrived, most of the children had already been shot dead and there was nothing they can do. And it's a way to absolve the police of their failure to act. When it turns out, no, there were at least 8 or 9 children that were still alive at that point, yet nothing was done. This continues to show that this law enforcement was not doing their jobs, but also has been misrepresenting the facts. Dina, is that your take of it too?
Absolutely. I mean, this story is horrifying on so many levels. But as a mother, the fact that the police did not go in there, and in fact, it was the federal agents who ended up going in there. They disobeyed the police chief's order finally and went in there. And it wasn't the local police officers that actually ended up even going in there. And the fact that they blamed it on the teacher, these poor teachers, what they have had to go through with the pandemic, the fact that their jobs teaching children are now at risk for being murdered on this frequent of a basis, and that they didn't do basic investigation. I mean, the police department is known for their investigation. They didn't do basic investigation, like look at a video surveillance before accusing a teacher. It's disgusting. Like, I don't even have words for how badly the police failed in this instance. And it's disgusting how much they're trying to put it on everybody else. I mean, interestingly, it's hard to hold them legally accountable, police officers. The Supreme Court has found again and again, they don't have a duty to protect us legally under the law, but we have an expectation for them to at least, do their job in a more basic way. And this wasn't even a basic way of doing their job.
Absolutely. If they are taking 40% of the Uvalde municipal budget, they should be at least doing maybe 10% of their job, yet it was nothing done here. And also seeing the story continue to change, I really hope that speaks to various agencies who just take police's word for it to not go ahead and parrot what they're told from law enforcement, that there may be maybe ulterior motives going on when it comes to actually getting the facts. And despite this readily evolving police narrative of what happened on May 24th, the leader is who we want to focus on right now. That is the officer who was in command there. Well, although he was sworn to protect Uvalde school children, he's continued to thrive. A week after the shooting, he took a new leadership position in town. Check out his photo here. This man is Pete Arendado. That is the Uvalde School District Police Chief. He is the one who made what they're now calling a wrong call by determining that the gunman had transitioned from being an active shooter to a barricaded subject. And well, Arredondo was quietly sworn in yesterday as a member of the Uvalde City Council without any advance notice to media and while not cooperating with the investigation. And meanwhile, the young lives that are lost are being laid to rest, those 19 children. Today, their services for the teacher, Irma Garcia, and a 10-year-old named Jose Flores. And those murdered at Robb Elementary School, they are being laid to rest in customized caskets, which it's heartwarming yet heartbreaking at the same time. Look at these photos here. No one should have the job of having to create these caskets for these kids, but there is an incredible gentleman named Trey Ganem and his team at Soulshine Industries, and they are creating personalized caskets for each one of the children based on their interest. Ganem and his team, they met with the grieving parents last week, and they talked to them about what their children really loved and what their interests were. And so now he is building these caskets, working around the clock to have them ready to lay the 19 children to rest. And meanwhile, what do we focus on now? The Justice Department, what they're doing. They announced that it's conducting a review of the Uvalde law enforcement response to the shooting. Per DOJ spokesman, the Justice Department review aims to provide an independent account of law enforcement actions and responses that day, and to identify lessons learned and best practices to help first responders prepare for and respond to active shooter events, said Anthony Conley, the DOJ spokesman. While that is good that there's going to be some oversight, I don't like what this oversight's doing because there's going to be no penal consequences. There's no investigatory angle to see if there is possibly maybe a pattern of practice of completely and total dereliction of duties. Whether this department is known for not doing its job, find a law, find a way to hold these officers accountable for letting these children die. It's like the courts will find legal loopholes every day, if not create them. My God, find one now. And I'd love to see a prosecutor even take them through the ringer. And the thing is, I'm not the only one. There are several law enforcement entities out there who are backing this federal probe, even though I believe they should be backing more. But as far as the entities engaged, what we know is that the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas, known as CLEAT, they're the largest police union in Texas. And in addition to encouraging Uvalde law enforcement to actually cooperate with the investigation, we definitely also know this. The organization was also sharply critical of the constantly changing narrative of events that has emerged so far. There has been a great deal of false and misleading information in the aftermath of this tragedy. Some of the information came from the very highest levels of government and law enforcement, CLEAT said. Sources that Texans once saw as ironclad and completely reliable have now been proven false. Absolutely. What many of us have always been saying in terms of not being able to trust the police and having those narratives be manufactured to fit whatever continues to hold police in their light is now coming to light, and even the unions representing the officers are calling it out. Dina.
I mean, we live in the wealthiest country in the world, and our children are being murdered, and we are doing nothing about it. And if we can allow our children being murdered like this, what's this? What is the rest of it for? What's the rest of our success for? What are the rest of our freedoms for? If we're gonna accept that this little child is gonna go to school and be murdered, it is not only unlivable, it is unforgivable, it is un-American, and our constitutional rights have limits. We've been following that death trial. You can have free speech, but it has limits. We can have rights to gun, but there are limits. Our children have a right to go to school free from gun violence. They have a liberty right, they have a due process right, and government's mandate. It is unlawful to not send your child to school. But if you send them, you take care of them, and we have not done nearly enough to protect our children.
Absolutely not enough has been done, and we want to see some action being taken out of Washington. But again, it seems that Biden definitely wants to play this both sides almost. We can negotiate something good when it's clearly the GOP standing in the way.